Hi, I'm Antonia Carlotta. This is Universally Me, the place for all things Universal, and today we're going on an adventure. These are my favorite types of videos to make these days, though they're kind of the hardest because I have to contend with weather, with sign, with other people, with batteries, with traffic, and like being on the move all over the city. But there's no cooler way to learn about history and the people of our past than through visiting the places that were such an integral part of their life. Today, we're going to explore the swashbuckling hero himself, Douglas Fairbanks. Douglas Fairbanks was a pioneer of early cinema, known for roles in films like The Mask of Zorro, Robin Hood, and The Thief of Baghdad. He's one of those people where I am really confident saying that Hollywood would not be the same without him. Of course, we are going to cover parts of his life as we're in his different locations around the city. But if you want the full Douglas Fairbanks story, you should watch my Douglas Fairbanks video, which I'm linking above here and in the description below. Douglas Fairbanks was born in Colorado, and while I did explore Colorado Springs for my Lon Chaney tour of Colorado Springs, which you should also watch, very cool, I did not go to Colorado for this video. Douglas moved to LA in the 19-teens, so that's really where we're gonna start today. I also found that some of his first homes may have been on Highland and La Brea, and I think one on Hollywood Boulevard. But there are no confirmed addresses for any of those, so we won't actually stop there. But I do have footage going from like one place to the next, so we totally go by Hollywood, by Highland, by La Brea. We kind of stop in all of these areas on the way. I also need to preface that LA is notorious for knocking buildings down and building new ones in their place. We almost treat the city like it's a film set in itself, and we put something up and we live a little life in it, and then we just tear it down and start fresh. So while I go by many of his addresses, some of them look totally different. But for all of those, I'll at least try to find pictures of what it would have looked like when he was actually living or working there. We're starting our adventure at Douglas Fairbanks' Star on the Walk of Fame, right outside the famed Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, and across from Grauman's and the Hollywood and Highland complex. This felt like the right place to start because this one street encapsulates so much of his history and impact. Douglas Fairbanks hosted the very first Academy Awards right here at the Roosevelt Hotel in 1929. The whole ceremony lasted only about 15 minutes, so totally different than today. I'm sure they didn't have to like play anyone off stage like they do today. He put some of the first hand and footprints in the cement right there at Grauman's. We're going to get to that later. And one of his favorite restaurants is just down the street, and we will get to that too later. For now, let's rewind a bit to when Douglas Fairbanks first moved to the West Coast. We are at 1015 Laurel Way in Beverly Hills, and this is the address that Douglas Elton Fairbanks listed on his World War I draft card in 1918. In 1918, he would have been about 35 years old. He was married to Annabeth Sully, but he was in the middle of an affair with Mary Pickford, and it was in fact in 1918 that his divorce from Annabeth Sully would be finalized. Douglas was doing very well for himself, as you can see by the home. This area of Beverly Hills is really nice. I know it was even back then. He listed himself as a producer working for himself, and he listed his offices at 1520 Vine Street, which I couldn't find an exact picture of what his offices looked like, but here is a picture of the area at the time. I am on 4th Street near downtown Los Angeles in front of a building that looks nothing like it did. So we are going to pretend like we're back in 1920. We're going to pretend this looks totally different. I don't know what that might have been. And we are going to pretend that we are hanging out with Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, who just recently divorced their spouses, and now Douglas Fairbanks is ready to marry Mary. So he is at his hunting lodge in Beverly Hills, which we will get to later, and he's hosting a dinner party with Reverend J. Whitcomb Brower, some friends, and Mary, and he decides that he wants to surprise Mary with her own wedding, which I do think is very sweet. I think it's romantic. I can see the holes in his plan. Mary shoots him down. She does want to marry him, obviously, but she's wearing black and she'd prefer to be wearing white, and it's a Friday night and she wants to get married on a Sunday. So they continue with their dinner party as is, and that Sunday they come here to what was Reverend J. Whitcomb Brower's home. He was the reverend at the Temple Baptist Church not too far from here, and they have a very small ceremony where Mary wears this white satin dress that she actually wore more times over the years. It was very beautiful. And also, this is just something I think is so funny. When Douglas Fairbanks was alive, he wrote a book called Live and Laugh. Reverend J. Whitcomb Brower here, about a decade after Douglas Fairbanks passed away, wrote a book of his own, which he called Life and Laughter. And I have a really hard time not feeling like he stole that book title from Douglas Fairbanks. What do you think? Not gonna lie, I'm very much regretting filming on such a busy street. We are currently on Santa Monica Boulevard right by Formosa, and behind me are about 18 acres that were initially purchased by Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks and known as Pickfair Fairbanks Studios, and later renamed to United Artists Studios. United Artists, you may remember, was a production and distribution company started by Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, D.W. Griffith, and Charlie Chaplin back in 1919 with the goal of taking some of the power away from the big studios and giving artists. This is where Douglas Fairbanks filmed Robin Hood in 1922. Unfortunately, after his death, Samuel Goldwyn, who was part owner in the studio, he renamed the studio after himself against Mary Pickford's wishes, and today it's known as the Lot on Formosa. There's still production offices in there, they still make movies, and they host events. I feel like this is definitely a spot that you can pass 100 times and forget to look at the building and realize that that's a functioning studio back there. I think that's pretty neat. You know, my Target is on the corner, a lot of my local spots. This isn't necessarily a touristy part of town, but there are a ton of great little local restaurants and bars that are fun to stop at. So if you're in the area, if you're visiting LA and you haven't been around here, you should come check it out. Definitely check out the Formosa Cafe right on the corner. Some of the biggest names in Hollywood history have spent their evenings there. We're in front of Chateau Trianon, also known as the Trianon Apartments on Serrano Avenue in Hollywood. And this building was commissioned by Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, and they lived here for a time in Penthouse B while their hunting lodge, aka Pickfair, was being renovated. This building is beautiful, and it's amazing to think that you can drive just 20 feet off of busy, kind of grimy Hollywood Boulevard and find yourself at this palace. It's such a surprise. And, you know, this neighborhood is okay. There's buildings that span decades, that span architectural styles, but this is just something else. I would be honored just to live across the street from it. There have been plenty of celebrity inhabitants here over the years. There are no vacancies now, but it is available for filming. So I was most excited to see that How to Get Away with Murder filmed here. It was built by Leland Bryant in 1928. I was really excited to find out that Leland Bryant not only built Chateau Trianon, but he also built La Fontaine, which is this gorgeous building on Crescent Heights and Fountain that I've passed 1,000 times and I've always wondered about. And he also built the Sunset Tower Hotel, which I go to all the time and which is part of my Lemley tour You'll have to watch it to find out. But to know that this one architect built not just this, not just Sunset Tower, not just La Fontaine, but all of them is pretty wild. I am just so blown away seeing the Trianon in person up close. I had seen its neon sign from sort of afar. You can see it for a couple blocks around. I've seen the neon sign before, but I had no idea what it was standing atop of. Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford loved Musso and Frank's, and so do I. It's one of my favorite restaurants. I try to come anytime I go see a show at the Pantages. It was opened in 1919, so it is over 100 years old, and it still has that like classic feel to it. You feel like you are time traveling when you go. Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks didn't just frequent here, but they actually had a hand in shaping the menu. After a trip to Italy in the 1920s, they tried fettuccine alfredo for the very first time, and they loved it. And they came back and they asked the chef here to make it special for them. He did make it for them, and then he did again and again and again, and it became their signature off the menu dish. And today it is their signature on the menu dish. You can officially get Mary and Douglas's fettuccine alfredo at Musso and Frank's, and like everything else on the menu, it's delicious.
These hampers in the middle of the forecourt. There's three that really set this whole tradition in stone, literally. Now, Norma Talmadge was the first one to ever have hampers here in the forecourt, and it all started with her through a simple little accident. Her and Sid Grauman were so enamored by the surroundings that she accidentally steps into a wet patch of cement on the set of construction, and the rest is literally history. She is the first. She actually dates it May 18th, 1927, the day that we opened. And on either side, we have Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks. Not only were they all great friends of Sid and early investors in theater, but along with Charlie Chaplin, they created United Artists. And you have the bird of Hollywood right in the middle of this forecourt. They also wrote hands with footprints of on the bottom, basically to say to the city, this isn't graffiti, this is meant to be here, since these were the only few at the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I am standing outside of the Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood. Outside because it's closed because they have a private movie screening tonight. So you win some, you lose some. But why are we out here? Well, this was the site of the very first ever movie premiere in 1922 for the movie Robin Hood starring Douglas Fairbanks. So these days, we kind of expect movie premieres, right? A movie comes out, we see all the pictures of the red carpet and the celebrities, what are they wearing, what's coming up for them. That didn't really exist before Robin Hood, but they put together this whole event. You could pay $5 to attend the premiere. The tickets sold out like in just a few hours. And they had all sorts of pomp and circumstance around it. People gave speeches, they did presentations and awards. Some of the actors dressed up in their costumes and gave a prologue to the film. And then the publicity around Robin Hood after was so big, and a big part of that was because of the premiere. So that became not even just standard, but expected for every movie, big or small, ever since. Sorry guys, I know the lighting's a little weird here, but I would rather weird lighting than be directly totally in the sun. It's starting to get to me today. I'm gonna literally melt. But right now we are at 1100 Carolyn Way in Beverly Hills. You'll remember earlier we were at 1015 Laurel Way, which was the address that Douglas Fairbanks had listed on his World War I draft card. We are literally like just around the corner and up the hill to get here to 1100 Carolyn Way. I feel really fortunate that we have an actual glimpse of the house here. Usually those gates are closed. Usually you're not going to get to see that, but we got really lucky with our timing. This mansion was initially built for Silsby Spalding, which is a tongue twister of a name. He was the first mayor of Beverly Hills, and Douglas Fairbanks leased it from him. And this was the last place that he was before moving into Pickfair, which is also just a stone's throw away. In fact, Douglas Fairbanks had a tunnel put in here that connected to Pickfair, but it was later closed up. This neighborhood is so nice. It's a really nice area of Beverly Hills. I used to have some friends that live along these hills, and we would kind of walk them for exercise and for fun when we were younger. And other than the occasional car careening around the corner, like, it's so beautiful, it's so peaceful, it's so nice. I would, die to live here. But yeah, welcome to 1100 Carolyn Way, and let's get going to Pickfair. We are at 1143 Summit Drive in Beverly Hills, and this is Pickfair. This is the house that pretty much everybody thinks of when they think of Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford. When Douglas Fairbanks originally bought it, it was a hunting lodge, and he spent years renovating, hence all the other homes all over LA in the meantime. And by the time that he finished, it had more than 25 rooms, it had 4 stories, it had tennis courts and stables and gardens, and I believe the first in-ground pool in a private residence, which looked like a pond or a lake. You could take boats out in it. Carl Laemmle ended up having the same thing at his house up the street, Diaz Dorados. And they were famous for throwing the biggest parties here. You were not anybody unless you were coming to a party at Pickfair. All the biggest actors and actresses in the world, of course, the producers and studio heads and directors, but also people like Albert Einstein and Amelia Earhart, just the biggest names you've ever heard. I'm sad to say that the Pickfair that we see here today is not the same Pickfair that Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks lived in. In the 1980s, it was briefly owned by Jerry Buss, who owned the Lakers. He sold it to Pia Zadora, and Pia Zadora felt like it was haunted by the ghost of one of Douglas Fairbanks' mistresses. So she demolished the entire thing. I'm pretty sure today it's owned by Unicom, which is like a really big global company. I appreciate that the gates still say Pickfair, and it still has a really grand feeling coming around the corner. We are at Hollywood Forever in the final resting place of Douglas Fairbanks Sr. and Jr. This area was commissioned by Lady Sylvia Ashley. She moved him here in 1941 after he'd been in the Great Mausoleum at Forest Lawn. And she commissioned this beautiful monument behind me in a classical Greek style, as well as this reflecting pond here. This is such a beautiful and central part of Hollywood Forever. I've taken many Saturday morning yoga classes right around this very pond. It really is so peaceful and beautiful. And just on the other side of this monument is where Hollywood Forever hosts its movie screenings with Cinespia. They do classical movies, they do cult classics and comedies, even modern films. We will be taking the kids here in just a few weeks to see Shrek 2. I think it's going to be a really great introduction to non-traditional locations to see movies, to see what to them is an old movie. They've been loving Shrek 1 though, and it just feels so fitting that Douglas Fairbanks' final resting spot would be so central in this iconic cemetery and so central in LA. It does feel like he's getting the space and the love and the recognition that he deserves here. I also want to say that Hollywood Forever in general, you should come and picnic and walk around and explore all there is to see here. In addition to Douglas Fairbanks, I believe at least some of the Ramones are here. My great-grandpa Edward Laemmle is here. Toto's marker is here from The Wizard of Oz. There are so many beautiful monuments, so many rooms. I know that this woman, Carrie Bible, does tours here. I haven't taken it yet, but I've heard incredible things, and I am really excited to take it. There are peacocks and ducks and other wild animals here. There is something so calming and peaceful and magical about being at Hollywood Forever, this really quiet space in the middle of the hustle and bustle of Hollywood. So don't miss it. Come visit. And that brings us to the end of our Douglas Fairbanks tour of LA. I already felt like I knew him after I did my Douglas Fairbanks biography video, but being in the actual places that he lived and worked and spent his time and getting to feel his spirit around me, I know I'm like a century off, but I still kind of felt his presence in a way. And I feel just so much more connected to him now. So I'm really grateful for getting the chance to do this, and I'm grateful that you guys are here watching it. Let me know what other stars you would like to see a tour of around LA or anywhere else. Honestly, if enough of you really want me to travel somewhere and do a tour of somebody somewhere else, I'm open to it. Just let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye.